and welcome Mike Schoettler, the New South Wales Chapter President for 1995-96. Mike, what was happening in your year as President?
Well, I guess the same thing that happens every year. It's always a challenge to make sure your numbers are there. And in those days, we would normally slide under 200 when it dropped back, and then we would struggle to get back over the 250. The measurement, for the most part, was trying to make sure that you had over 100 at the meeting.
Yes.
And we always measured what we were doing by whether or not people would show up for it. That was the bottom line. If we got over the 100, we thought we were doing all right.
What was a highlight of your presidency?
Highlight for me would probably have to be our awards dinner at the end of the year. And that, at the time, was more of a transition between one committee and the next. It was only the second year that we actually gave out awards. That was something that we brought in during Brendan's presidency. But we wanted to be able to highlight the things that we achieved. And I think that's always going to be a big year for any organization, when you can look back and say, well, look at all the things that we did do.
Oh, yes.
Big moment for me probably would have been when we published our first list of accredited speaking members. The ASM was something that had been brought in a bit before, but hadn't been taken up to any great degree. And there was never any listing. There wasn't a piece of paper that you could get to look at your fellow members prior to that. We certainly didn't have a net presence. So it was a big thing to be able to actually look at a list and see an awful lot of the names of people that you knew.
What was the worst moment in your presidency? That's if there was one.
You know, as president, obviously we do an awful lot of work with our committee. And I suspect the worst moment for me might have been a stage at which I was sure we were going to just increase the size of the committee and add some more people and get some more people involved. And I found out that, in fact, some people were against that. Some of the committee didn't think it was a very good idea. And in the course of our discussion, I found out that one fellow was honest enough to just say that he was against making any changes. He didn't want to change anything at all. Now, I thought that speakers were probably very much different to the clients that we work with. But the reality is, we're just like our clients in lots of ways. We've got our comfort zones, the things that we'd like to have. And I haven't forgotten that, because there's lots of times that you think change is obvious or needed, but you should never assume that everybody's going to want to do it. That was certainly a low point for me.
What do you wish you'd known then that you now know?
In the market itself, we always talk about what's popular or what we could be doing or what's a hot topic. And the reality is, it's not about the market, it's more about you. It's what about you is really unique. Where is it you deliver great value? And to be able to focus on the value that you actually deliver. And I guess in the national speakers, we always talk about the value that we deliver to our members. If you can focus on that, I guess it's back to then counting the noses and just see if people like it or not.
So, Mike, how did you get started in the speaking business?
Actually, my topic is sales and negotiation. And I got into it in a commercial way. I worked for a company called Hunter Douglas, and prior to that, similar roles, working in distribution, franchise organizations. I learned early that you could make a deal with somebody that owned a business, but if you couldn't sell it through to a sales team, it wasn't going to happen. So my best work was always done in sales meetings. That was when I wanted to work, and I had a conference up in Singapore, and we used Winston Marsh in Singapore. And he did a terrific job for us, but in the course of the event, I decided I wanted to be doing what he was doing instead of what I was doing.
Cool.
I wanted to go from conference to conference rather than just talking about one or two a year.
What are your thoughts on producing product?
You know, product to me has always just been a reflection of people's business, whether or not it fit with the way you went about doing it. And I suspect there's still a role for that. But I recognize now that product can be a big leg up for both your credibility and your visibility. It can help in that sense. But I think I agree with Martin Grunstein sometimes. And, you know, it wasn't cut out to be schlepping books around. That's not what I thought the speaking business was about. And I don't think I ever would. But the internet now and some of our audio programs offer tremendous opportunities.
So are you much more into product now than you were?
I'm probably on the edge of product now when I always wasn't. Now I have an audio product to produce something on being a great MC. And in fact, my most recent newsletter is now also in an audio version. So people can get a PDF that they can print out from my newsletter. They can see the HTML and just read it if they want to. Or in fact, they can click on the listen button and get that MP3 download and just listen to me go through the same material. As a speaker, I think that MP3 opportunity is something not to be missed.
What is one must for all successful speakers?
I think the only must is for you to remember who you are, where you're coming from, and the value that you deliver. And don't believe that the solutions that any other speaker comes up with and tells you that you must do necessarily will apply. The only must comes from within you. A lot of people refuse to come to national speakers in the first place, and they probably run a good business anyway. There's others that have helped to build their business in the association, and they've hung around to give back to the association. Some people don't choose to do that, but we don't talk about the ones that don't. We just highlight and thank the people that do, as it should be.
Thank you, Mike Schoettler, New South Wales Chapter President, 1995-96.